The 24th of October 1944. The Sibuyan Sea, Central Philippines. The air was thick with the smell of salt water, and the horizon was alive with the sight of enemy aircraft descending from above. The Imperial Japanese Navy's super battleship Musashi, the largest and most powerful warship ever built, was about to face its ultimate test. But as wave after wave of American carrier aircraft bore down on it, no one aboard Musashi could predict the grim fate awaiting them. The Sibuyan Sea, an expanse of ocean far from land, became the site of one of the most dramatic moments in naval warfare. Musashi was not just a battleship, it was the epitome of Japanese naval power. Commissioned in 1942, she was armed with 9 massive 18.1-inch guns, capable of firing shells that weighed as much as a small car. Yet, despite her immense firepower, the ship was now vulnerable to a force far more deadly than she had ever encountered: American aircraft. As Musashi sailed into the heart of the battle, her crew was ready for the fight. But they were unaware of how drastically warfare had evolved since the beginning of the war. The strategic objective of the Imperial Japanese Navy in October 1944 was clear: counterattack the U.S. forces in the Philippines and force them into a peace settlement. In response to the American invasion of Leyte, the Japanese High Command launched Operation Shogo, a massive naval offensive aimed at delivering a decisive blow. At the center of this force was Musashi, a giant among ships, its vast guns and armored hull designed to deliver devastating blows to any adversary. But the Japanese Navy, despite its size and might, was operating on borrowed time. The aircraft carriers, once the pride of the fleet, had been decimated during previous battles, leaving Musashi and the remaining battleships as the last bastion of Japanese naval power. They would have to rely on their own anti-aircraft defenses and the remnants of their air forces for support, an overwhelming disadvantage against the superior American carrier groups. As the Musashi and the rest of the fleet moved towards the Philippines, they encountered formidable opposition. American forces, under Admiral William Halsey, had already anticipated the Japanese plan. They had stationed their fleet carriers in strategic locations to ensure a swift response. American radar systems, honed through years of combat, picked up the Japanese forces from miles away, alerting them to the approaching threat. By the morning of the 24th of October, as the Musashi advanced towards the Sibuyan Sea, her crew felt the mounting tension. The possibility of battle was growing by the minute, and the vastness of the ocean seemed to amplify the uncertainty that hung in the air. This would be no ordinary naval clash. It would be a battle between a titanic force and a swarm of American aircraft that could strike from a distance, a new form of warfare that the Musashi was unprepared for. By 10:30 a.m. on the 24th of October, the Musashi had entered the heart of the Sibuyan Sea. The crew aboard the mighty battleship knew that battle was imminent. They could see the American planes in the sky, hundreds of them like a swarm of angry hornets descending upon them. The Musashi's anti-aircraft guns opened fire, sending a wall of flak into the sky, but it was clear from the beginning that the odds were stacked against them. The American attack came in waves, each more relentless than the last. At 10:50 a.m., dive bombers from the USS Enterprise, Lexington, and Intrepid dove at the massive ship, releasing their payloads just before pulling up at the last possible moment. The first few bombs struck the Musashi's deck, one of them piercing through and detonating in her forward section, sending flames and smoke billowing into the sky. Yet, despite the damage, Musashi pressed on, determined to continue her mission. But the onslaught wasn't over. As the battleship struggled to recover, torpedo bombers from the USS Franklin and USS Lexington came in for their strikes. Torpedoes slammed into both sides of the Musashi, ripping open her hull. With each explosion, the damage was more severe. The ship's immense size seemed to work against her despite her heavy armor. The sheer volume of hits overwhelmed her. Crew members worked furiously to flood compartments and prevent further damage, but the Musashi was sinking. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Inaguchi, knowing the ship was doomed, refused to abandon ship. He remained on the bridge, issuing orders to save as many men as possible, even as his beloved battleship was being torn apart. His determination was a testament to the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, a final act of sacrifice in the face of inevitable defeat. By 1:30 p.m., the Musashi was listing heavily to port, her forward section submerged, and fires raging across her decks. Her crew, many of them injured, struggled to survive in the chaos. In that moment, the final blow came as more torpedo bombers dove toward the ship, hammering her with more strikes. Musashi, once the mightiest of Japan's naval fleet, was now powerless to defend herself. The ship was now a dying giant, her proud guns silent, her hull crumpling under the strain of repeated hits. Captain Inaguchi's final order was to attempt to beach the ship, but it was too late. The Musashi began to drift helplessly as more explosions rocked her. As the Musashi continued to list, the desperate efforts of her crew to keep her afloat grew weaker. By 3:30 p.m., the once proud battleship was on the verge of sinking. Despite the crew's heroic efforts to counter flood compartments and extinguish the fires, the Musashi was beyond saving. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of burning oil filled the atmosphere. Her once mighty guns were silent, her towering superstructure broken and battered by the sustained attack. Captain Inaguchi, who had sworn to go down with his ship, remained at the helm, giving his final orders to his men. The ship's survivors scrambled to abandon ship, leaving behind the wreckage of what was once the largest battleship in the world. As Musashi began her final plunge into the depths, a thunderous roar filled the air as her hull cracked, and the water rushed in. By 7:30 p.m., Musashi finally slipped beneath the waves. Her stern rose briefly into the air before sinking into the Sibuyan Sea, leaving behind a trail of steam and debris in the water. Over 1,000 men perished with her, including Captain Inaguchi. Only 1,376 survivors were rescued from the waters, their lives forever marked by the traumatic events of that fateful day. The loss of the Musashi sent shockwaves through the Imperial Japanese Navy. It was not just the loss of a ship, but the loss of a symbol of Japanese naval power. The Musashi had been built to be unbeatable, a vessel that could withstand anything the enemy threw at it. Yet, it was destroyed by the very forces she was designed to defeat: aircraft. The battle for the Musashi was a devastating reminder that the age of the battleship was coming to an end. The sinking of the Musashi on the 24th of October 1944 marked the end of an era in naval warfare. As one of the largest and most powerful battleships ever built, its loss was a monumental blow to Japan. The Musashi, along with its sister ship, the Yamato, had been symbols of Japan's imperial might, representing the peak of naval technology. However, by the time Musashi sank, it was already evident that the era of the battleship was over. The loss was not just strategic but psychological. Japan's naval leadership, already reeling from earlier defeats such as Midway, now faced the stark reality that air power had decisively replaced the battleship as the dominant force at sea. The Musashi was sunk by a relentless swarm of American carrier-based aircraft, proving that even the most formidable warship was vulnerable to the might of a modern, flexible, and fast-paced aerial assault. In the aftermath, the Japanese fleet was left with few remaining heavy battleships, and the remaining carrier forces were severely depleted. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, in which Musashi met its end, would go down in history as one of the largest naval battles ever fought. It was a critical moment that marked the beginning of Japan's naval decline. For the United States, the victory at Leyte Gulf and the sinking of Musashi signified a crucial turning point in the Pacific War. The U.S. Navy had gained control of the seas around the Philippines, paving the way for further advancements towards Japan's home islands. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of American aircraft carriers and the overwhelming power of air superiority, a lesson that would shape naval strategy in the years to come. In the years following the war, Musashi's legacy lived on. The sinking of the ship and the loss of so many men became a symbol of the sacrifice and resilience of Japan's military. For the U.S., it was a reminder of the technological and strategic innovations that had led to victory. The story of Musashi and her final battle in the Sibuyan Sea would be remembered as a pivotal chapter in the saga of World War II, a battle between Old World power and New World technology that reshaped the course of naval history. As we reflect on the legacy of the Musashi, we honor not only the ship itself, but the sailors who fought aboard her. Their bravery in the face of overwhelming odds is a testament to the courage of all those who served in the Pacific theater. The sinking of the Musashi was a moment of great loss, but it was also a harbinger of change, one that ultimately helped bring an end to the war in the Pacific.